Hey everyone, welcome to the program WRSA Radio. I am your host, Grenadier One. As always, I hope you are all having a good week. I'm very good, in fact. Feeling back to normal after my brush with what I believe was the coof, and finishing up my PT on my shoulder injury, which has healed up pretty nicely, I think. Still not exactly 100%, but I'm probably at about a 95. So doing well. Speaking of health, last weekend we did our conditioning hike at the park, 2.2 miles with a small day pack. Then we had a nice conversation for about 2 hours. And covered all kinds of topics. We talked about constitutional carry in Georgia. We talked about Canada. We talked about communications and future plans. It was good stuff. And if you missed it, you missed it. But you're in luck. This was not a one-time deal, as I've said. We will continue this and ultimately plan on doing something a little bigger. I'll give you some insight into that here before we get into the meat of the show. What I would like to do is sometime in April, we'll have at least a 24-hour camp out, if not a 3-day, like a Friday night, Saturday night into Sunday kind of camp out. There's a location in North Georgia that's west of Atlanta where they have converted an old rail line into a very long walking and biking trail. It runs almost from Atlanta all the way over into Alabama somewhere. And I don't know the end of it, but because I've only been on areas in Georgia. And I've spoken about this before when I've talked about different things. It's called the Silver Comet Trail, and it is a fantastic place to hike and bike. And along the line, there are a couple of campgrounds that have direct access to the trail. So what I was thinking is that after some time hiking in other locations to kind of build up that endurance and the weight and the distance and all that kind of stuff on our packs, we would get a big campsite at one of these campgrounds for the weekend and have people gather there Friday night or Saturday morning, and then we would all go out and hike on the trail and do like 10 miles or maybe 15 or 20 if we're at a place where we can do that. That would be great, but we'll see where we are. At any rate, then we would come back to the campground and camp overnight into Sunday, and then do another 5 miles on the trail that Sunday morning before we pack it up and kind of head out. The reason being for that is that it's not that bad to do a long day hike or ruck march or whatever you want to call it. But it is a test to get up the next day and do a good distance again the next day. So it's a little more of a test, a little bit more of a strain on your body. And I think this will be an awesome event and a chance to have that bonfire time, campfire time that is so productive in building cohesion. It's good stuff. So I'll keep this on a burner and keep you guys posted as we get closer. But it's a little tentative at this point because I just don't know where we'll be at that time. But I think we'll be able to do that. And I'll coordinate with Concerned American to see if we can make this happen. In the meantime, we will be doing the next conditioning hike at the same park next weekend, but it'll be Sunday, February the 27th, sometime, in the morning, probably same time, 10 o'clock. But I will post that info later, and certainly on the show, final details next week. But anyway, just keep watching Gab or keep watching the Mothership, and we'll post information there about it. So anyway. Okay, let's get on the main stuff this week. We are back in Canada again this week because the honkening continues, and it's getting more and more interesting as we go along. In addition, it looks like the U.S. version is moving ahead at full steam, and will be kicking off in a couple of weeks. And we'll post more about that as we get info, so again, watch over at the Mothership for more information about that. I'm going to deviate off my script here for a minute because just as I'm recording this, about 20 minutes ago, the Ottawa police began to move against the truckers that are directly around Parliament there, arresting and pushing them. It looks like they're going to kettle them into place, in at least some portion of them, and arrest a bunch of them. So probably by the time I post this, there'll be more developments on that, but it's going on as I'm recording, so I don't really have the most up-to-date information about it. But anyway, so first off, let's get up to speed on the events of this week to look at what's been done to the truckers by these Canadian tyrants. The main thrust of the events this week was the invocation of the Emergency Powers Act by Fidel Trudeau. And this is getting into swing this week as it's been being debated in Parliament. I don't know all of the ins and outs of the Canadian system, but my understanding is that this act has to be agreed upon by both houses of Parliament. So if one of them rejects it, he's not allowed to implement that. It's not a carte blanche action on the part of the Prime Minister. Trudeau is facing serious heat from the opposition, as well as members of his own party, with those, speaking against this naked power grab, calling it a clear slide towards tyranny. It's all that and more. The Deputy Prime Minister announced that the tyrants have already distributed a list of identities and crypto wallets. Now pay attention to that, crypto people. To every financial institution in Canada, and are requiring that they all confirm and suspend any financial activity from those accounts. They are to freeze the funds of not only the protest organizers and the organization, but individuals identified as being part of the protest, as well as those identified as donating to the protest. In fact, there was an interview with a government official in which he was asked about those donors to the protest funds, and he responded that if you were a Trump supporter, you should be very concerned about having your bank account frozen. Now, I have no idea what the hell this clown was talking about, because Trump is not in Canada, and regardless of what people in Canada think about Trump, their support or lack of support for him has absolutely nothing to do with the trucker convoy. So I guess he's trying to assert that somehow it's American Trump supporters that are funding this convoy, which I guess he didn't get all the information before he made a complete fool of himself, because the hack of Gibson Go showed that the majority of those donating to the truckers were from Canada. So he's full of shit. It's an attempt to paint the supporters of the trucker convoy in Canada as some kind of radical right wing, among other accusations and BS stories that have come out. Now, the interesting thing, speaking of the hack of GiveSendGo, the company confirmed that they were indeed hacked, and the CEO and founder yesterday publicly called for the FBI Cybercrimes Division to investigate the hackers and press charges against him. And there's a couple of problems with that. See, the hacker is already known, okay? He identified himself. He lives in Canada. And if you want to know where his information is already circulating on Gab, just go look. His address is out there. So he's known. He's very proud of this, and he's bragged about it, as well as in the past he's bragged about other hacks of right-wing sites that he has conducted. He's the guy that hacked Gab. So he's also let some things slip out, and others have kind of put two and two together to show that this hacker has done work for the Canadian version of the FBI in the past. So it appears that this guy was more than likely working with the Canadian government to hack GiveSendGo and identify those who donated to the truckers to provide that information back to the tyrants, because they took that information and they've distributed it. And this gets worse. Now, I'm not going to show images of all this because I suspect it would get the video taken down. I'll just direct you over to Gab to see the articles and post about this guy and about the other things that are taking place that I'm going to talk about. The information this guy pulled from GiveSendGo was posted online, and supposedly the hackers said that they were going to distribute it, just to journalists so that they could do research. Well, that's not true. as it's been going around on Twitter already, and this is in spite of Twitter assuring people that they did not allow hacked information to be distributed on their platform. At least that's what they told everyone who was posting information about Hunter Biden. And, which we can all see how that works now, I guess, if you had any doubt. Well, a Salt Lake City journalist, and I use the air quotes here, has already taken this information from donors and looked at donors living in Utah, and he's begun a harassment campaign against them. He's reaching out to them for interviews and then releasing their names in his reporting if he gets a response that he's not happy with or something he thinks he can run with. And the Twitter mob has already digitally lynched an aging business owner, a restaurant owner in Salt Lake City for her $500 donation. And she's had to basically shut down her social media because of threats of violence against her. I don't have to tell you that if Antifa identifies some of these donors that they will go after them. Okay, this is going to lead to people getting hurt, all because they supported a protest for freedom. Now, this cannot be allowed to go without a response. At a minimum, we cannot allow perfectly innocent people to be labeled as terrorists for sending some cash to the convoy and then being doxxed and assaulted by mobs. We may not be able to prevent the government from going after them, but we can damn sure warn those that might think that they can harm them or their businesses that they will pay a price for it. If they think that they can do that and get away with it, it will become eye for an eye. This is how things spin out of control, but this is why America, I guess. Now, back across the border, the truckers are reporting today that some of them are already seeing their, these financial actions taking place and their accounts are being frozen. The unintended consequences of these actions is that the act has set off a run on the Canadian banks. All of the major institutions were showing their online portals as being shut down or glitching, and people were having problems in ATM machines and things like that, not being able to withdraw their money. This is, supporters of the convoy proactively removing their funds from the bank, and this is a good thing. This is how you fight back. This is the way. Make them pay for their actions. You shut down these people. You no longer deserve my business, and even if I didn't donate to the convoy, well, I'll take my money elsewhere. If you really want to hammer them, then pull the funds out of the bank and convert it all to cash, and go cash only. And while you're at it, take as much as you can afford and convert it to physical silver or gold even, because the run on physical silver might have some very interesting second and third order effects that are, they're not expecting. Now, I mentioned last week that I felt the point was quickly approaching that would decide this thing. The truckers ran off of the Ambassador Bridge over the weekend, which was not good for the cause, but there are still other crossings and other protests that are taking place in different areas, and they can be put back in place very quickly at a moment's notice. And this is the time. I believe this week that they will break Trudeau. If the truckers can show their resolve and stay the course, they will break him. He will utilize all of his power that he's asking for, and it will show him for what he truly is. He will become politically radioactive, and it will likely result in the fall of his government. Now, just today, again, to kind of go off on a little bit of a tangent here, as I mentioned, this was being debated. His emergency powers were being debated in Parliament. Well, they canceled Parliament session today because of this police action, and they used that as an excuse. They said, "Oh well, we can't. It's too dangerous to debate the emergency powers because of all this stuff going on," which is just the most, ridiculous thing in the world. You are the ones that were controlling the police action. If you wanted to debate in Parliament, you could have postponed the police action until, any time. You could do that any time. The protesters were not bothering and stopping Parliament from taking place and from sitting. So that's just complete nonsense. And I think that is a huge political mistake for Trudeau, and I think he's going to face a lot of backlash and a lot of heat for that. Like I said, I think that this will be the end of him. But here's the thing. For the truckers, the protesters, you're in for a penny and in for a pound at this point. You can't give in now. And it's terrifying, but I think you need to see that, unlike the J6 protesters here in the U.S., you have support from a broad base of people, and the money will get to you somehow. Even if they freeze your bank accounts, people will support you. They will get you support, okay? You have to just face the fire and weather the storm that they are directing against you. And there's only one outcome that this can lead to, and it must be the removal of Trudeau. Okay, he must step down and a new prime minister put in place, and that new prime minister must remove all of the mandates. And in addition, and this is important, this is critical for what the truckers are doing, they must demand and get a pardon for all who participated in or supported the convoy. That's the only acceptable outcome. Otherwise, your nation is lost and communism will be right on the heels of this failure. If you don't secure that pardon, they'll do to you just what the U.S. did to the January 6th protesters. They'll, okay, fine, we'll wait, and then they will use all of their resources to go after you afterwards. Already we've seen the arrest of 2 of the organizers of this protest, and that will not be the end. They will continue to arrest people unless that pardon is granted. So that, again, you're in for a penny, in for a pound. You've got to see this thing all the way through. Recall from the show Game of Thrones, and I know that that's Hollywood nonsense, of course, but the saying bears weight. When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or die. There is no half measure. Too many patriots are currently rotting in a Washington jail, and if you could ask them, they would tell you this was true. Okay. If you cannot face this, then you need to probably take a different path in the way that you're protesting. So, what the tyrant is not counting on, at least as it appears, is that he's simply trying to force the truckers to move out of Ottawa. They think that if they are moved out, then they will, they'll get bored and they'll just go back to work and suck up to the mandate. Well, that change in tactics that I mentioned last week on the show would be a really good alternate pathway here. Leave Ottawa. Go ahead. Get out of Ottawa. You've made your point there, and they're going to try to fight you, and as we see today, they're arresting people. But rather than go back to work, locate a big, massive piece of property that will allow you to just gather. And then mass on that property and go on strike. Just a general F you, we're not going back to work. Like I said, that support will come in. People will send food and supplies to keep you going. They can't force you to drive your truck, okay? Although the word was that they were sending threats to tow truck drivers that if they didn't tow the truckers' rigs out of the city, that they would be arrested. This is apparently what emergency powers enables. Even if they haven't been approved by Parliament, you can compel slavery, I guess, in Canada. I don't know. Like I said, I don't live in Canada. I'm not a Canadian, and maple syrup does strange things to you, apparently. But, all before Parliament confirms these powers are valid, he's moving with them. Regardless, I believe that simply refusing to haul products like food and fuel into the cities, specific targeted cities, and basically shutting down the supply chain is the alternate pathway. I think that's what you have to shift to now. It's just something to consider, as I said last week. You have to be nimble and change up your methods while the tyrants are orienting themselves and getting themselves aligned to where you're currently at. Change, move, and it forces them to reset and rethink what they were going to do. Now, one more thing with regard to the tyrants in Canada, which I can't believe I'm having to say that and use that terminology, but we've always thought of Canadians as being just sort of really extremely nice and meek, and maybe crazy because of the cold weather, but I never really thought of Canadians as being tyrants. But such as it is. Honk, honk. Not only are they freezing bank accounts, they're threatening to take children into protective services, and they're threatening to take the pets of the protesters as well. Many of these folks that, are truckers, they live in their vehicles and they're bringing their animals and things. And Trudeau is threatening to take these pets. This is just some of the most blatant and disgusting behavior that I've ever seen in a Western country being used against protesters. It's one thing to go into a protest and have, riot control measures used against you, tear gas or what have you. You face that and then you walk away and, you go back to doing what you were doing before when either you win in the protest or you lose or whatever, but you walk away from it. To have this long-term impact and assault against people for just speaking their minds, it's just so anathema to everything our Western nations are founded upon. It's disgusting. It's just terrible. At any rate, we will continue to monitor the situation, and when the convoy ramps up here in the U.S., we will be following that closely. And it's possible that we will have sources on scene with that effort. It just depends on how it goes, but we'll keep you posted as that unfolds. Now, I think it's something to get involved with. If you're capable and this gets rolling here in the U.S., then support it however you can. Just be smart about it. You're on notice already here that this they will act against you, against your supply chain. So you have to be smart how you make that happen. We talked about different ways last week to do that, and I think you can figure it out and make it happen in a safe and effective way for you, and effective for those who are involved in the convoy. Like I said, just be careful how you do this, but don't be afraid to do it. Now, for the final bit of information today, to remind you of the depths that we have fallen, this week the Durham investigation actually produced something. Documents filed by the independent counsel this week detailed out exactly what we already knew to be true. We already knew all this information. This was just confirmation that the Clinton campaign and the DOJ and the intel agencies conducted a spying operation not only against Trump while he was running for office, but Trump while he was in the office of the presidency. If they can do that to a sitting president, then it's no shock that they will steal your money and your home and your livelihood and take your child and your pets. How long will we allow this continue without a response? Okay. This only stops when we make it stop. It's just complete and total honk, folks. Now, one more thing before I go. I don't know the class count. I know that it was posted as having a slot for 20 participants, but go over to NC Renegade. He's posted a comms class that's going to take place next Saturday at the Education Building in Murphy, North Carolina. The details are all on NC Renegade's page. I think he was going to have 20 students. So go over there if you're interested in that and you're local close by for a drive-in, and you need comms information. I think it'll be a pretty good class. I'll be there at least for some time, and go over there, check it out. If he's got slots available, get registered for that and come see us. So anyway, that is all I have time for this week. Come see us over on Gab and the Mothership, and I will see you on the next episode.